I'd like to blur organizational boundaries. We need to have key roles and responsibilities, and the responsibility being an important piece of this. Once you've defined what the responsibility of each person is, whether that's a PMO or a TPM or a engineering manager or a product manager, I blur the lines between all of them. Every PMO should have a strong opinion on what the product should look like. Every PMO should understand how engineering works and what the technicalities of what they're building are, and vice versa. Every engineering manager should know what the program is. And so it's that knowledge. A lot of times people think of PMO as this policing organization that makes sure everybody is in their uniforms and marching to a rhythm. That's not the way I look at the role of a PMO. Teams oftentimes are reluctant to seek help. And it's the role of PMO to highlight those, going, hey, this team might need a little help in getting things aligned. And quality remains the one thing, especially for PMO, to be vigilant about. If a product is not ready to be delivered, then let's call it.
Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a truly global technology leader whose work powers some of the most widely used enterprise software products in the globe. Sudhir Reddy, Chief Technology Officer at Esper. Sudhir is an exceptional engineering leader, a master technologist, and one of the most effective builder of high-performing global teams. From Hyperion Oracle to Intuit, Chef Software to Esper, Sudhir has led everything re-architecting legacy platforms to launching brand new products that powers business globally. What really stands out about Sudhir is his rare blend of strategic vision, deep technical knowledge, and the strong sense of customer empathy. He's just as comfortable rolling up his sleeves with engineers as he is navigating conversations in the boardroom. And on a personal note, Sudhir is a wonderful human being and a fantastic person to know. The kind of leader who can ask you a thought provoking question and make you laugh at the same time. And I owe a lot of my early success at Hyperion and Oracle to Sudhir's guidance. Working with him taught me lessons that I still carry today. So, Sudhir, thank you so much for being here. I'm truly excited to talk to you today.
Likewise, Amrita, those are very kind words. Don't let my head get too big with all those kind words. Thank you. Excited to be here and hanging out with you again.
Yeah, this is fantastic, Sudhir. I'm very excited. Now, let's start with the beginning question that always keep thinking and talking to different people to get their perspective. You are a CTO of Esper, and program management is a part of your org as well. And I was talking to Rick Porter from GitHub and had a similar conversation. The program management can look so different based on leadership. There could be a CPO organization, CTO organization, and program management could roll up to there. Or sometimes they could sit in between. So there are different blends of program management. You have worked across wide spectrum from large enterprises to mid-sized companies and have built strong engineering organizations along the way. So I'm curious, how do you define the role of PMO within your organization? What are your expectations from a high performing PMO team?
Yeah, great question, Amrita. Yeah, and if you look across the industry, there are so many different ways you can think of the PMO organization and things. But one thing I find consistent and I find really important is what you mentioned in terms of the organizational where they sit. And partly I'll first answer this and then I'll get to the why, is really I think that the PMO organization is an independent organization in any place that really helps guide and put guardrails and brings things together in terms of large programs and strategic things that an organization needs to accomplish. And the reason why I think that independence matters or the sort of the rolling up to somebody senior in the organization matters is because exactly the role of PMO for me is really about removing hurdles for teams to get things done and recognizing where the hurdles are and where help is required and things. So if you take those principles and then apply them to any organization, you'll then come up with where is the right place for the PMO org and how do they fit into this. And as you mentioned, there's obviously everywhere from project management all the way to stakeholder management and convincing everybody in the organization that what we're doing is important. Those are all the things that I expect the PMO organization to do. So, short answer to your question is they are the remover of barriers, is what I keep telling my team, and recognizing where things need to improve and helping improve those program and as a part of the execution of the program.
Building on to that, you own both engineering and PMO function. So from your vantage point, you have a very unique perspective to this. So where should PMO lean in most? Where should they step back? How do you see that whole mix?
Yeah, and fortunately, I have the luxury of having the product organization, the engineering organization, as well as PMO, as well as a lot of our customer delight, as I call it, side of the house. All I'm responsible for all of those, which gives me a real advantage with having PMO go help all these organizations where they need the help. So where PMO needs to lean in the most, in my mind, is I'll go back to one, understanding what is our goal, what is the outcome we're trying to drive. I'm a very outcome-driven person. So you'll see me say this 100 times, is what are the outcomes you're looking for? Once you've really absorbed that and the PMO organization understands that, then you can go support the teams in whatever way they need, whether it's the product organization or engineering, wherever it's supporting them, asking, what do we need to make this program successful? What are the things we need to put in place? And more importantly, what are the things we need to remove in order to help move things efficiently and fast?
You said a very important point, Sudhir, outcome driven. And I do feel many times PMO functions reduce to you need to just track these things. It's not about just delivering the line items, but how it is impacting overall picture, and as well as really sometimes being able to trade off that there are multiple projects. Which one of them is a priority? What we are doing, why we are doing it, is it the right thing to do as well? I believe on having that understanding and having an ability to ask those questions really gives PM a lot of empowerment. I feel that's where you're leading into in terms of when you talk about guiding the teams as well, right?
Yeah. And this is true not just for PMO, but for every team, every organization, right? I truly believe in if we are all aligned on what outcome we're trying to drive, whether that's increasing your user count or whether that's increasing the usability of a feature, whatever it is, the outcome is super important. And then there are a million ways to get there. And then you need to let the teams go and figure out what the best way to get there is and give them the independence, give them the freedom, the authority to go do try different things. And PMO plays a key role in that. If we're aligned on what the outcome is that you're trying to drive, then you can go navigate saying, hey, this path may be not the best one, but let's try it, or this we shouldn't go down this path, or this is the best path. That guidance is where then you can let the teams go and execute. And in the process sometimes make mistakes, and that's okay.
Since PMO often plays the role of glue between many functions, the lines of responsibility can get blurred sometimes between
Mhm.
product management, engineering leaders, and PMOs, right? So, have you encountered things like that? And
All.
if you have, what are the biggest friction points you see, and how can we overcome those friction points?
Yeah, I'll turn that around a little bit. I see this all the time, by the way, where there's what I call friction, little bit of a healthy conflict on, hey, is that really my role or is that the other person's role? The way I look at it is, I'd like to blur organizational boundaries. We need to have key roles and responsibilities, and the responsibility being an important piece of this. But once you've defined what the responsibility of each person is, whether that's a PMO or a TPM or a engineering manager or a product manager, once you know what they're responsible for, as in here are your deliverables, here's the outcome you're driving. Once you do that, I blur the lines between all of them, right? Every PMO should have a strong opinion on what the product should look like or what the outcome should, how you should drive. Every PMO should understand how engineering works and what the technicalities of what they're building are, and vice versa. Every engineering manager should know what the program is. And so it's that knowledge, I blur that, but then the responsibilities are clear on who's going to deliver what and what the thing is. So that's how I like to organize things. So I think that the friction is a little bit healthy sometimes, as long as it doesn't escalate into a full-blown conflict.
Absolutely. I love it when you say the roles and the responsibility should be clear, but you like to blur the lines, which is very interesting. I'll give an example. This is a funny story. I joined Marketo as my first TPM job. Before that, I was engineering manager, right? And then when I took in TPM, I thought, hey, it's so easy and I understand everything about technology and all the fun stuff. And I get into this conversation and there's a design discussion happening. And I cannot stop myself from really saying, hey, this is how we should design this thing. Then the PM, like product manager, pulls me. I think you should let the engineering
Yeah.
technical architect design. You should focus on that. So I feel that was a big learning from me, even though sometimes we carry the legacy of where we come from as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's some of that, but I actually think that's a strength in an organization. If those conversations can happen and they're healthy and you're only innovating, you can only make things better by doing that. Again, I go back to once the responsibility is clear, your opinion is just as valid as anybody else sitting in the room, whichever role you're playing. But the decision maker is clear on, hey, opinion heard, but here's how we're going to go about doing this, right? I think that's the way I like to run teams. And that's how strong teams are built with lots of innovation and lots of autonomy in the teams.
I think that's fair enough. Having ability, a lot of PMO leaders sometimes do not speak up when it's not very PMO specific in designs. I've seen it firsthand. So I believe that having that ability to speak up and where they can pitch in, it doesn't matter if it's an engineering and a product decision. I think that's a very healthy friction, if you will, right? Or
Yeah.
healthy debate, if you will.
Healthy conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. On your day to day as a CTO,
Mhm.
what aspect of PMO execution make your life easier or enable you to make faster decisions?
Well, there's two ways I think about that. For me, the PMO role is really about, I'll go back to removing barriers. Look, any organization, whether you're making toasters or whether you're building software, wherever, you have some outcome you're trying to drive, and there is going to be any given day numerous issues teams hit and numerous blockers, quote unquote, that the teams hit, etc. It's really the PMO's role to go unblock that. A lot of times people think of PMO as this policing organization that makes sure everybody is in their uniforms and marching to a rhythm. That's not the way I look at the role of a PMO. It's really the remover of barriers across the organization. Where are the barriers? Identifying them, surfacing them so that I, as in my role, can go help the teams unblock that. If everything is humming along, that's the best you could hope for from the organization, right? But that's not how things go, and where barriers need to be removed or where teams need to seek help, and teams oftentimes are reluctant to seek help. And it's the role of PMO to highlight those, going, hey, this team might need a little help in getting things aligned. And so that's I think the key role. The second part is really about leading with data, is really about really understanding that outcome. What does it mean in terms of the data that we need to have and collect, and interviewing the product managers or even customers for that matter, or other stakeholders like sales and pre-sales organizations and stuff. And then coming up with, here's the outcome we're trying to drive. Let's start figuring out what we need to build to drive to that outcome. It's really that muscle that we need to, that I think is super important for the program management function.
I think that's a very important point. The data part that you talked about. I think that is one of the key aspect of that PMO can bring a lot of value is really connecting all the different organizations and how a particular program its success can be measured through data. We can always deliver a program. Is it really measuring up to what we wanted to do? Is that story being told through data? Are we looking at data that, okay, we did this and we expected our revenue to grow this much? Has it happened? If not, what else can we do, right? So I feel that needs a lot of connecting point between, as you say, sales, pre-sales, even customers, right? And gathering that what would be those KPIs really to help drive that conversation is definitely very, very critical.
And I'll add one more thing to what you just said, is also then taking the data and seeing what we could do better as we move forward. With programs don't end on the delivery of a software or delivery of something. There's so much more that happens afterwards, right? It's what can we learn from this? How can we do better the next time? Those are things that we should be asking.
No, absolutely. Then building on to that, so we talked about how PMO can help with data, but how do you even measure the effectiveness of PMO organization? Are there specific outcomes or signals that you look for?
The specific things that I look for is it's a lot about stakeholder management, right? A lot of times engineering teams go off, and when I say engineering, I mean the broad engineering teams, product management, engineering, all of that go off and are in their silos doing the work they think are important and all that. But a lot of that gets lost in what the rest of the organization needs out of the engineering teams. For example, you're building this new widget that's going to be the best thing in the world, and you're going to get a million customers for that. And the engineering team is off building that, oftentimes in that silo, without seeking feedback, without actually understanding if that's doing the thing. And more importantly, as it's being built, letting everybody else in the organization know here's what's happening, here's why it's happening. So it's really about the communication aspect for me that is the big signal for PMO being super effective. Apart from the day-to-day stuff of making sure things are on track, they're not going off the rails. So anytime, for example, a sales leader comes and asks me, "Hey, we were going to work on this big new thing widget. What's the status of that? Or when is it coming up?" Then I'm thinking, "Hey, we didn't do a great job of communicating." Because that shouldn't be a question that they ask. It should be something that we have already, and that oftentimes gets lost in melee of day-to-day activities and things. We forget to communicate that the work we're doing is super important for the rest of the organization, and they need to know what's going on, whether it's good or bad.
I often say that PMO is also the newsroom for an organization. Like, what have you missed this week? Like, you get that snippet of like key things that has been happening across the organization. I think that that's a big part of PMO remit, that how to tell the story of our execution.
I like the newsroom thing. I'm going to use that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my core belief system is that for any role to succeed, there must be a clear ownership and accountability. And if you don't define what team owns, it quickly can become optional. I've seen that sometimes the core deliverables for a PMO team can be a little bit ambiguous. For example, we know that every organization, it's very clear product owns the product vision, right? Engineering owns the code, and PMO, it's somewhere fluid in between. Now, from your perspective, what do you see as a key deliverables of PMO?
For me, it's not at all ambiguous. It is driving the outcome that you've set out to drive in the program. And it's not about artifacts. It's not about whether your Jira is clean and everybody's putting in the right fields in Jira or whatever system you use, or whether your stories have been written correctly, etc. It is, have you accomplished the outcome, or are you driving towards the outcome at the time that you want it to be in the market, and all those things. And that's the key deliverable ultimately from the PMO organization. And everybody's responsible for delivering that, but it's driving that and putting the guardrails in place, I'll go back to removing barriers to make that happen is the key deliverable. Concrete examples are if a team comes and says, "Hey, we were dependent on this customer or this customer facing person that needed to give us input," might turn around to the PMO organization and go, "Did you recognize you needed to do that? Did you facilitate that? Did you remove that barrier?" That's, I think, the key deliverable for the PMO organization. So it's not as ambiguous to me, and I'm not talking about day-to-day tactical things that you need to do, but for me, if you're driving towards the outcome, you're accomplishing what you need to do. And I'll go back to, if you know the outcome, the means to get there, there's a million ways to do it.
Driving outcome, always it's the responsibility of PMO. And I do believe sometimes that the leadership empowerment also needs to align with that. Not that everywhere it's similar, but I do believe in general that's where the spirit behind the role is, if you will, right?
And, to that point, Amrita, the leadership also has, and by leadership, I mean the leader who's responsible for having the PMO organization under them. Their job is really in convincing the organization that the PMO team is really that enabler, that remover of barriers, and they're not there to police or to put people down when they make a mistake and things of that nature, right? That's really their job.
Now, where do you see PMO really hit their stride? What part of the life cycle you feel that brings out their superpowers? Is there any specific one, or it's across?
Every part, all the way from an idea inception all the way to delivery, and then seeing the outcome or seeing what impact it has on the market or what impact it has on whoever the stakeholders are, etc. I think every step of the way, PMO has to be part of that, responsible for that, and steering that.
And when you're scaling fast, nowadays we start a company and we have there's this innate need to scale fast. What's the one thing you empower your PMO not to compromise on, even under pressure?
This is not just PMO, it's for everybody in the organization. It is quality. And as you mentioned at the beginning, I've dealt with large enterprise systems as well as part of being with Intuit. It was really catering to millions of small businesses and smaller customers. The one thing that remains constant is if you break the system in any way, you're impacting lives, you're impacting business, you're impacting real dollars. So quality remains the one thing that I, especially for PMO, to be vigilant about. If a product is not ready to be delivered, then let's call it. I'd rather see that we take the hit on time than on quality, because recovering from quality issues is a very, very long process.
I think that ability to say no to a release is a big deal, right? So we can always work on the time, but quality, even a small bug that might really be very impactful to a customer or one big customer, that's going to be a big deal for the whole organization. I'm switching gear a little bit here on the PMO side. What's one unconventional but powerful skill you wish that PMOs should develop or would develop that you haven't seen yet?
Amazing question, Amrita. I will give you an unconventional answer. I think of the PMO organization really as the therapists for the organization. And by that, what I mean is when you're dealing with 5 teams or 10 teams, there are going to be teams that are super efficient. There are going to be teams that are not. And it's really understanding where and what touch every team needs in order to make a program successful, how to make it, understanding the organizational nuances of what motivates a team or what motivates an individual. Those are the things that I feel like the PMO, if that skill is established, and how to make friends and make things happen, that is the key skill. Oftentimes, I find the PMO organization is not that. What they think of themselves or what the rest of the organization thinks of them is the exact opposite of that. So that's, I think, a key skill for any PMO, the PMO individual, team, organization to have, that'll then make the entire organization successful.
Now, I love that therapist, which is unconventional, but I do see the point though. Like PMOs have to influence without authority, right? So you
Yeah.
might, and there are hundreds of P1s in an organization. Now every project is a P1, and then you need to actually go motivate somebody to, yes, it'll take 5 minutes, go do it, right? And provide incentive or provide a platform where people can without judgment say their fears or like why it's not happening and things like that, right? I feel that takes the edge off a lot of high stake projects, right? So having
Yeah.
that forum or having the ability to tell somebody, I feel can go a long way to make a project successful. That is very unique one. All right, so
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, please do.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see PMOs facing today? And what's the one thing you believe organizations could do differently to support PMO success?
I think I've said this earlier, and I'm going to bring that back, is really the image of the PMO in an organization is very bad from, and by bad, what I mean is it's not what I think it should be in today's, at least in the software industry, right? It's really about being an enabler as opposed to an enforcer. That I think every organization and every leader should really help organizations understand is that the role of PMO is really removing barriers, enabling fast, efficient execution. And of course, it's about surfacing issues or risks where they see them, but that's not really the point of it. The point is to drive the outcome in the most efficient way. And I think that as organizations realize that, it becomes much less friction in the wrong way. You need some friction in the right way, but not all of the negative friction should go away if you fix that in an organization.
Very well said. And to think about that, sometimes people feel that telling out risk kind of puts a team in a negative light, but that's not the spirit of it. If you know the risk and there is a way to either you have a mitigation plan or you need help from somebody beyond your organization or from leadership, I feel enabling that conversation in the right way helps to overcome those obstacles. I feel that that is a big lesson I have learned in my career, that knowing the risk is more important than knowing the good things about a program or a project. That is the, if you don't have risk, that means there is something wrong with the program, probably. That's how my head goes towards. Switching gear a little bit, PMO leaders who have aspirations beyond program execution, what are some of the natural next steps in broader leadership positions that you see, potentially even C suite roles? What kind of mindset and experience shifts are essential to make that transition?
Yeah, great question. And I've been fortunate to have worked with many amazing PMO leaders, including yourself, in my career. And I think the one piece of coaching that I will give all of them is still, regardless of whether you're a TPM or you're running a program or managing entire portfolios of programs, really at the end of the day, understand the business strategy and understand where the strategy is and drive towards that. It's that outcome word again. And if you do that, then you will emerge as a natural leader in the organization, not just in the PMO or even in product or engineering organizations. It is in the entire company. You can be an extremely valuable person. And there is no reason for whether it's PMO or PM or engineering leaders to then go a step up and become business leaders as part of that evolution. And I have seen that happen in many cases. And every single time, it is really about them understanding the business, understanding what drives the strategy for the company, and then things will happen naturally.
Absolutely. There is no one role that is defined. So if you are good at delivering and understanding outcome and you're good at really maintaining relationship, removing cross-functional barriers, there could be any role in the leadership that is game. So yeah, well said, Sudhir. Now coming to the fun part of the conversation today. I love to end any conversation with a rapid fire. Are you ready
I'm
for
in
it?
trouble. Okay, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. The first thing you do when a project goes entirely off the rails.
Freak out. No, I'm kidding.
Of
No,
course.
it's actually the opposite. I try to calm the entire organization down and figure out what the next logical steps are to recover from that.
I have seen it, so I would not even say that I haven't seen it. So I've seen you do that. So absolutely makes total sense. What's your favorite leadership quote, or one you secretly roll your eyes at?
I like the secretly roll my eyes at. You know, one of the things that I always roll my eyes at, or at least think, does this really make sense in our world, is when people say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I've just spent a half an hour talking about the destination, the outcome, always drive the outcome. And when I hear of course you have to enjoy the journey. Of course you want to have fun doing the things that you're doing. But if you lose sight of where it is that you're headed to, so I always get a chuckle out of when somebody tells me that. Certainly, sir or ma'am, enjoy the journey, but also keep your eye on the ball.
I'm never going to use that again.
I do enjoy the journey, but I
Uh,
want to know where I'm going.
what would you name a PMO themed rock band?
Something about agile. How about agile anarchy? Uh,
Oh, all right, all right.
yeah, yeah.
Love.
The other thing is I've been asking my PMO teams about burn downs and things. Maybe burn down brigade. There we go.
Okay, okay. There's two good rock band names. So whoever is looking for names that can use it. All right.
Or for your team name.
Yes, absolutely. That there you go. All right.
Yeah.
uh so if your work style were a movie title, what that would be?
Ocean's 11. is
Why
the
am
way.
I not
Because
surprised? Why am I not surprised?
because I think of myself as a team builder. I think of myself as always having a plan B and plan C, always enabling people to do stuff that they didn't think that they could do. And if you're not performing as well as you should be, you're not invited to Ocean's 12.
I love that. Yes, I'm not at all surprised, Sudhir. I think totally makes sense. Now, what's the weirdest or most unexpected place you have had a work call or solved a problem?
I don't know if it's it is not a place, it's a time.
Mhm.
So, and this actually happened to me at Esper. This was my second week on the job. I was visiting India, my team in India. We have an amazing engineering team in Bangalore. And on the Monday, I had just landed on the Sunday. And on the Monday morning, an incident breaks out where a customer is deeply impacted by the software and they're calling us. And I woke up at 3 a.m. because I was jet lagged and I had to get on this call and I stayed on all day and it was a very tough set of discussions. And I didn't know what I was talking about, but I was there to help. But that was probably the weirdest one.
I think that's the last of my rapid fire question. You
Oh,
excelled in each of them. Well,
oh wow! Yeah. You need to up your rapid fire game a little bit. Put
yeah,
me on the spotlight.
I feel like we're just getting started. I should have one more rapid fire round with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sudhir, for being here today. I had such great conversation. We talked about how the whole PMO mentality or a team can be structured with the right kind of leadership, right kind of mindset, and what is exactly the brand of PMO should be and could be, right? The enabler, not an enforcer. I think that's a very important part that how PMO should be looked as well, right? And there are a lot of misconception within organization that how PMOs run their business. But I feel this really helps for PMO leaders who are trying to structure their teams. So really appreciate from your vantage point the points that you talked about.
Always love hanging out with you and chatting with you, Amrita. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sudhir.